Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jake Truitt here. I just wanted to welcome you all to my first podcast series. The podcast series is going to be called Cinema Time. Here on this podcast, we're going to be talking about a various amount of movies, TV shows, facts about the movies, actors, actresses, genres, just different things here and there, basically. It's all raw material, meaning I'm just going to talk about it. I will obviously, of course, be doing my research on these movies for those people out there who don't know about these movies. And if you've never seen them, it gives you a little insight on what the movie's like without obviously giving any spoilers of the story. But without further ado, let's dive into the first episode of my new podcast, Cinema Time. Just to let everybody know, I will be doing this at least once a week. I had a tough time deciding what day I wanted to do the episodes on. I've decided on Saturdays I will be doing an episode every week. And if I am ever going to be busy on the upcoming Saturday for the following week, in the previous week, at the end of the podcast, I will inform each of you guys in this podcast if I have plans the next week. So stay tuned for that. All right, with introductions out of the way, the first movie we are going to be diving into this new podcast series is a movie that is a very old story, originally told in the form of a musical in Broadway theater, but they did make it into a movie in 2007. It is called Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. As I said, this is our first movie we'll be talking about, or as I'd like to call it for this series, our movie of the week. And I'm going to be diving right into this film for you guys. So, for those of you who are wondering, who have never seen this movie, what is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street? As I said, it is a movie that came out in 2007. The rating of the film is rated R. It has a runtime of 1 hour and 56 minutes. And the genre, for those who are curious, it is a horror/musical. Now, I know what you're wondering. How can a horror movie be musical? Or musically inclined? How is that possible? Horror is horror. You think horror movies, you think, Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, or Friday the 13th, or any of the Blumhouse movies like Sinister and all those. That's what you think when you hear horror. You don't think, hey, let's make a horror movie that's also a movie that people sing in. Musicals, you think Into the Woods, you think Mary Poppins, you think The Greatest Showman, you think of just all different types of movies, but you don't think of a movie that's horror being musical. Well, I'm here to tell you now, a lot of people had doubts about this movie when it came out many years ago, but it is one of the greatest movies ever made. It has a very talented cast of people. Some of them, unfortunately, have passed away as time has gone on, but nonetheless, it still has an amazing cast, and I'm here with the list now. This film includes actors such as the famous Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Jamie Campbell, Sacha Baron Cohen, Jane Weisner, Alan Rickman, and Timothy Spall. Timothy Spall, for those of you who don't know, was also in the Harry Potter movies. He played Peter Pettigrew. And then Alan Rickman, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he was Professor Snape in the Harry Potter movies. He plays the infamous Judge Turpin in this movie, who is the villain of the story. Some of you are probably asking, well, you've told us all these details about the movie. What's it about? Well, the film, as it says here, the exact plotline, the film retells the melodramatic Victorian tale of Sweeney Todd, as I said, played by Johnny Depp, an English barber and serial killer who, while seeking revenge on Judge Turpin, played by Alan Rickman, who wrongfully convicted and exiled him to steal his wife, murders his customers, and, with the help of his accomplice, Mrs. Lovett, played by Helena Bonham Carter, processes their corpses into meat pies. Now, I will say this. I know what you're thinking. That sounds disgusting. Trust me, it is. But, nonetheless, it's a musical, and Johnny Depp is one of the main characters in it. And I'm going to be honest. I saw this movie for the first time back in 2008 or 9, roughly. So I was young. But I was immediately attached to the film for the story and for the musical side of it. Because I was always involved in theater, in middle school and especially in high school. And I also started getting into acting at the age of 12 and voice acting as I got older. And Johnny Depp was actually one of my biggest inspirations, as was Robin Williams, may he rest in peace. But yeah, for those of you who just heard me say the plot line of this film, you're probably thinking, okay, well, I'm queasy, I'm not going to watch this. I will say this. If you have a weak stomach, meaning you can't even handle the sight of blood, even though it's fake and it's just a movie, this isn't a movie for you. Telling you that now, because there is a lot of blood. That's all I'll say. But other than that, if you look past all that and you focus on the story and you focus on the songs that are involved in the film, then I guarantee you'll actually enjoy it. And I've actually wondered this myself for years. If this movie, at least some parts of it, were based on true events. And I was told when I was younger that a majority of it was, but I just looked it up now, and it says here, though dismissed as a fictional story for many years, researchers today have turned up evidence that this gruesome serial killer was, in fact, a real barber who is believed to have murdered about 160 victims before rendering them into meat pies. There you have it. There's no speculation on whether or not it was real or if it was fake. That just confirmed it. It was real. It says right here also, the real Sweeney Todd's barber shop was located on Fleet Street next to St. Dunstan Church, which was, conveniently for the barber, built over a series of tunnels, some of which contained burial vaults. The brilliant but sick barber had equipped his shop with a chair that was set over a trap door. If the barber released a lever and his customers leaned back in the barber chair, it would rotate, pitching the victim into the basement below and revolving another chair upwards in place of that one that had just disappeared. There's a lot more details that goes into about what would happen after, but if you watch the movie, it kind of shows you what happened, even though obviously in the movie itself, it's just acting, clearly. But there's a reason, they don't go around telling people the real story of the real Sweeney Todd from all those many, many years ago, is because they don't want, fans of this movie to watch it and knowing that it was based on true events. They don't even put it in the movie that this is based on true events, because then everybody would be afraid to go to barbershops. Like, obviously there's no such thing as a crazy killer barber now. There's crazy barbers that are crazy in the head, but not crazy killer barbers. So that's the reason they don't put that it's based on true events in the movies, not to scare people away from barbershops. Now, I was looking online and I noticed here's a list that says 10 things you may not know about Sweeney Todd. Some of these facts, I was reading through them and I did not know this. So we're going to get this information together. Here's the first one. It says, this was the first musical ever to be performed in an outdoor theater at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. It previewed June 21st and June 24th in the Ingolstadt Shakespeare Theater at the time. It says the highlighted one here is Sweeney Todd's character originated in The String of Pearls, a story published serially in a weekly magazine during the winter of 1846 to 1847. In this story, Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett were at first just thieves and later became grisly business partners. In that story, they were simply motivated by greed, not revenge, which is now the primary theme of the musical. The story went through many incarnations before Christopher Bond turned it into a play without music in 1973. Stephen Sondheim first conceived of a musical version that same year after he went to see Bond's take on the story at Theatre Royal Stratford East. The musical version of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, has been around for over 4 decades and has been adapted into 5 feature films between 1926 and 2007. As I've stated, another fact here, in one of these films, Johnny Depp was cast as Sweeney Todd in Tim Burton's adaptation before anyone had heard him sing. A very difficult feat musically. 80% of the production apparently is traditionally sung, while only 20% is spoken in dialogue. Another fun fact is that in the original production, Angela Lansbury played the role of Mrs. Lovett. She went on to win a Tony Award for her performance as the character. To some people, the idea of the cannibalistic pastry, the meat pies in this case, may sound familiar. This idea appeared around 1594 in Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, as well as in Charles Dickens's novels The Pickwick Papers, 1836-37, and Martin Chuzzlewit, 1844. And, okay, one of the facts, I'm reading this now. This is what I mean. I know I said that he was based around a real person, and I read those facts to you earlier. But apparently it says this. This is what I mean by people getting the information mixed up. It says here, there is a common misconception that the original story was based on fact. We are happy to note that Sweeney Todd is not based on a true story, and it says this may put your mind at ease when you enjoy your next meat pie. So there you have it. It is not, in fact, based on a true story. One source said it was, the other said it didn't. That's what I mean by people not understanding completely if it's based on facts or fiction, but we just confirmed that it was indeed not a true story. And the last fact they have on this list, apparently it says commonly mistaken to be set in the Victorian era in which it was first published. Sweeney Todd's setting is actually earlier, 1785. This would put the film or its story in the Georgian era. This film has, like I said, an incredible story, an incredible set of music. So yes, there is a lot of blood in it, there is gore in it, but if you can look past all of that, and as I said, just focus on the story, focus on the songs and what is being said in the songs, because the songs, as anybody knows with a musical, each song tells a part of the story, little itty bitty parts of the story. So if you can just look past all the blood and violence and just focus on the story and the singing, I guarantee you, this is a movie you will enjoy and one you will watch over and over again and never get tired of. And then you'll eventually download the soundtrack like I have, and I'm sure like many other people have in the past. Apparently, this movie was given an 86% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, we all know Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is very popular and very well known for giving a lot of movies bad ratings. And when I say bad ratings, I mean Rotten Tomatoes is very well known at giving really good movies terrible ratings and really terrible movies good ratings. We'll dive more into that later in the future, but 86% from Rotten Tomatoes is actually a fair score for this movie. I think, honestly, in my opinion, this movie should have gotten a bit higher, like at least 95, 96%, because of how fantastic and overall amazing this film is. But, 86% is a fair score. This film was also directed by the infamous Tim Burton. We all know who Tim Burton is. He has directed and written lots of movies that we fell in love with, movies such as Edward Scissorhands, Sleepy Hollow, Dark Shadows, Coraline, Secret Window. I'm naming off all these movies. These are just examples, but there is a long list of movies and shows we're going to be talking about on this podcast in the future, because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of movies and shows out there, so you're in for a bit of a wild ride with this podcast. Like I said before, every week we will be talking about a new movie or TV show, stating the facts, the cast, crew, basically just talking about it as I did with this movie. Instead, we'll be doing it with that instead. But, again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. The episodes will roughly be about 15 minutes long. So without further ado, I really thank you guys all for listening and joining in to this podcast. This concludes episode 1 of my new podcast series, Cinema Time. This has been your host, Jake Truitt, saying, when the movie starts, please be courteous and silence your cell phones and enjoy the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.